Hello and welcome to Fire in the Valley. Today we'll have myself, Mighty Pete, and we're joined by the Brandon Woolley. Good afternoon to you, sir. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whatever time of day it is with you.
Thank you. It's afternoon here. Same to you.
Yeah, listen, it's great to have you on. So just to give our listeners a bit of a background here. So Brandon is the founder of Fire Within Nutrition and Fitness. He is a personal trainer that has 12 years experience training over 3,000 clients. He has a podcast called Fire with Nutrition and Fitness, available whenever you get your podcasts online, and health course called Health Transformation, and a personal transformation story of starting out at 244 pounds and pre-diabetic. He lost 84 pounds and kept it off for 12 years now, and has dedicated his life to helping others make transformational health changes. What makes this approach different is that there are no shortcuts, no gimmicks, and no food fads or crazes. Instead, he encourages small intrinsic motivated changes that are sustainable and address every aspect of your health. So there you go. That's who Brandon is, right? That's you.
Yes, sir. That's me. That's all of me.
So tell us a bit more about you. Who is Brandon and where do you come from?
Yeah, so I was born in Florida, but moved to North Carolina when I was 5 or 6 in the States here. And so I really grew up in North Carolina. We were a lower economical standpoint household and had all kinds of crazy stuff going on that you wouldn't think was normal now. But growing up, I didn't know any better. Like a lot of bipolar in my family and some interesting things. But lots of heart disease in my family as well. So I grew up a fat kid, ended up peaking at 244 pounds in college and decided I didn't want that to be my life anymore. So I saw pictures on social media that just were horrendous of me that I couldn't believe were me. I remember feeling the seatbelt cutting into me. I remember not having any confidence. I remember being insomniac in such a state of poor health. I think I lost 6 months of my memory. It's gone. It's just because of how insomniac I was during that period. And I didn't want that anymore. So I made a commitment to make a change. I started out with calorie counting and marathons and quickly learned those weren't sustainable methods and had some issues. I ended up with knee surgery. I was hospitalized twice in my marathon chasing days. And when I got my certification to become a strength coach, I switched from being a teacher to doing that and learned the proper way to exercise, got my nutrition certs, and found a much more sustainable, injury-free way to do that. And just dedicated the last 10 to 12 years, I don't even know how long it's been at this point, of my life to helping other people meet their total health objectives, whether it's weight loss, putting on muscle, increasing their blood work to positive levels, helping with thyroid, all kinds of stuff. And so who is Brandon? I'm somebody who's been on both ends of the health spectrum. I've seen the light. I love it here, and I want to help other people find it.
Wow. So tell me, I mean, you talked about being the fat kid. I mean, what triggered that in the first place? Do you know? I mean, what was behind that?
It could be all kinds of things. I mean, I don't think there was a lot of education on food and nutrition, at least not in my household. I don't think my parents knew any better, but I grew up on Hostess and Little Debbie cakes and Star Crunch and Twinkies and Pop Tarts and these giant variety packs of different chips. So you get the sour cream and onion, the barbecue, the Fritos. And if it ran out, they went, oh, growing boy, let's buy more. And of course, these foods are highly addictive with almost no nutritive quality. But I'm sure there are emotional reasons why I ate as well. You know, I have a podcast and we've had 2 experts on emotional eating on. There's a lot of arguing between my parents, some rocky past. They were great parents. I love them. My dad's dead now. He died of heart disease last year, but by all accounts, they're wonderful, wonderful, loving parents. But I know that probably had something to do listening to the arguments growing up. In fact, in my first relationship, I thought that's how you communicated, was by screaming and arguing. So it took a lot of growing and work on myself to overcome that. But I'm sure that had a piece to do with it. But some of it, I think, was just lack of education. And hey, these foods taste amazing, and when they run out, mom and dad buy more. And I think that's probably what started it.
Yeah, it's kind of mad, isn't it? What
Yeah.
So tell me, I mean, what does fire in the belly mean to you? And I suppose, I mean, really bringing into this also, obviously, your own podcast there, Fire Within Nutrition and Fitness. So, I mean, are they similar? Do you think, or is there fire in the belly and fire within one and the
No,
same?
I think there's a similar component. I'll talk about my brand and my meaning first personally, and then I'll talk about how it relates to Fire of the Belly. Fire Within, to me, I have this image in my head of the Firebird, that the old tale where it turns to ash and
Mhm.
like, oh man, it's dead, but then it rises this completely new creature that's far better than it was to begin with. And I feel like anybody has that transformative ability in their life. And it doesn't have to be weight loss. It could be like what I was talking about with learning how to communicate in a relationship. It could be growing their business mindset and the possibilities there. But most of the people I work with, weight loss and nutrition and health is such a huge part of that transformation because it does affect every piece of your life. It affects your confidence, which is going to affect your ability to meet people, to perform in the workplace, to get along with associates. I think it hits every aspect of your life. And if you're eating properly, you can think better. And if your brain has better fuel, your perception of the world around you is different. And I think you can become more optimistic and we can lose sight of a lot of those open doors if we're in survival mode because our body doesn't have what it needs to thrive. So to me, the fire within has to do with that transformative ability that's intrinsically motivated. I don't need a carrot dangled in front of me to do this anymore. This is what I want. And I'm self-driven to do it. And that's the point where I hope to get people. I think most people, when they start a weight loss journey, they do want to get better, but it's very easy to fall off the bandwagon, and that intrinsic motivation isn't always strong enough to overcome the hormonal wall you have to cross to say no to sugar, to get better sleep, to motivate yourself to get into the gym. And I like to use my past failures as fire in the belly to push me forward. So if I start to see a few more pounds creep up on that scale, when my dad died in the funeral and going through that whole process and driving back and forth to take care of my mom, as a nutrition coach and trainer who does this as a living, I put on 15 pounds. And as I saw that creep up, I said, no, I'm not going back there. You get a fire in your belly to stop that train. And I was able to go right back. So I lost 84 pounds. I've kept it off now for over a decade. There's been some slight fluctuation up and down, but and I've been primarily in maintenance mode. It doesn't take, once you get to where you want to go, it's a lot easier to maintain than the effort it took to get me to where I want to be. But if it starts to creep up, you get that fire inside of you. No, I'm not going back there. I know what that felt like. I know what I have now, and I'm not willing to give it up.
That's super interesting. I mean, are you generally pain driven, pleasure driven, or sort of toward or away from goals? Where do you sit?
No, I never thought about that. That's a really interesting perspective on that intrinsic motivation. Initially, I think it was pain driven. I got made fun of a lot at school, beat up, picked on. My brother would, as brothers do, I'd probably do the same if I was in his position, but he was relentlessly calling me fatty, fatso, whatever. And I got tired of that. So I think part of it is pain driven, but now that I've made it to my goal, it's pleasure driven because I really enjoy that clarity of mind, that my body works well, my clarity of thought, how I feel, the control of the hormones, the confidence, which is just as much of a motivator as that pain was. So I think now it's both, but initially it's fair to say that it was pain driven.
It is always interesting how different people are motivated. Because you talked there. I mean, you mentioned motivation, inspiration and transformation, and they're really very different, aren't they? Right? Because we can all be motivated to go to the gym once and have a healthy dinner, but to change the way you do everything, that's a game changer, right? That's a whole different level.
Yeah, yeah, because motivation and discipline are two different things.
Mm.
If you're disciplined, even if you're not motivated, you still do the thing, and that's tough to do.
Mm. So when you talk about transformation, then what is the key to that? I mean, is it because you mentioned diet there? Is it a case of change your diet and then ultimately change your life, or do you find it has to come within first and the change needs to happen?
Yeah, I do think if you're intrinsically motivated and you can tie it to an extremely, extremely good, extremely strong why. I want to lose weight's not a great why. So Paul Riddick uses an exercise. Well, he'll ask you 7 times to go deeper on why is that important? Why do I want to lose weight? Because I want to feel good. Why do you want to feel good? So that I can produce better for my family. Why do you want to produce better for my family? To give them opportunities I didn't have, and so they don't have to go through the same thing. So ultimately, what does it come down to? I want to leave a legacy. And that is a much stronger why than I want to lose weight. But I think diet is a big part of it. Being intrinsically motivated is a huge part of it, and I think that for it to be sustainable, taking small steps that are consistent versus an overhaul are key. A fad diet can make you lose weight quickly. It absolutely can, but you're going to put it back on because you haven't adjusted and gotten yourself to a point where it can sustain these changes. So now sometimes there are times where it might be a good idea to do something extreme like a keto diet or carb cycling or intense cardio for a period of time. If it means avoiding becoming type 2 diabetic or going on drugs and doing these other things or avoiding a significant surgery, then maybe it's okay. But again, we need to go back and slowly establish those sustainable, consistent habits that you can do for a lifetime. And that's what separates me from most people in my position. Because I know how to make you lose 30 pounds in 30 days, but I'm not going to do it because it's not in the best interest of your body's health, your hormones, and your future.
That's interesting. I mean, so it's thinking of it in a different level, as you say, it's like, well, we can do the weight loss. It's not really the weight loss. If I pick that up right, it's more, it's the mental change, it's the mindset change, it's whatever that says this is the new you. So the weight loss theoretically is almost a secondary factor once you get the mindset. Have I understood that correctly?
Yeah, I think so. Because if there's not a change perceptually there, then you're going to go right back to what you were doing within a couple of weeks. I usually see it within 2 weeks of somebody trying a crash diet or some approach like that.
And that's probably down to your slim fast, what do you call these Weight Watcher clubs and all the rest, right? It's just a yo-yo where we do well, big pat in the back, we disappear, we munch God knows how many bags of chips, and we come back again, right? And so the
Yeah,
round goes on, right?
yeah, and I think some of those programs, the community aspects are helpful, and having that account. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and there also has to be a lot of self-reflection and education. I think consistently having a positive influence in your ear is helpful, whether it's a mentor, a podcast, constantly reading for those goals. That makes a huge difference too. Because then you're constantly changing your environment into one that supports those goals. And if that aspect isn't there, I think it's harder to maintain as well.
What moments of transformation did you have? I mean, what moments did you get to where you're saying enough was enough, and it was time for change?
Really, I mentioned earlier with my story, seeing those pictures on social media and that seatbelt, and I got on that scale at the student gym at East Carolina University. I saw 244 pounds. I couldn't believe it. So that, and then realizing, hey, 6 months of my memory is gone because that's what poor health I was in. And then as I did the study and the research, I understood how beta amyloid plaque builds up in the brain. And then I found out about how we have a system in our brain called the glymphatic system that washes away that beta amyloid plaque that causes memory disturbance and connection between the neurons. So I wasn't sleeping and I was eating absurd amounts of sugar. That's why those 6 months are gone. And I can't get that back. Which is probably wasn't anything exciting happening then anyway, but I was just in that cycle of poor habits. But I think that's huge. So people that are concerned because they're epigenetically or if they're predisposed to Alzheimer's, diabetes, things like that, you don't have to go there. But if you do the things that cause that, you will. So just because you're disposed to something doesn't mean it's going to happen. And that's a field of science called epigenetics. It means above genetics. Those genes have a protein coding that sense their environment. So if you have an Alzheimer's gene and your environment is high sugar and you're not getting amyloid beta plaque cleanup because you're not sleeping, then yeah, it's probably going to express itself. But it doesn't have to. We have a choice.
Hmm. Well, that's what this all comes down to, right? Is choices. And
Right.
it's the easiest thing and the hardest thing all at the same time, right?
Yeah.
How can you, or how do you sort of motivate people to, one, recognize those choices and to take the right choices, because it's, yeah, I mean, okay, we'd like to be fit, but then as you say, is it down to the 7 whys? Do you have to get to the core of saying what is your key motivation here?
Honestly, tasers and cattle prods do the trick. I'm just kidding. I do sit down with each of my clients, and we do, on that initial intake, we try and decide, why is this important? Why is it, what are the consequences if you don't do it? What are the positives if you do it? And weigh those decisions. And then I try and give them the tools they need along the way to get there. I give a lot of education on food and how different items affect hormones. And I think that education piece and understanding how everything works makes it a lot more compelling to do something or not do something. Because if I don't know why it's important or how it affects things, I'm not going to blindly follow it. Some people will, but I'm stubborn. I'm a stubborn person. I was that kid that had to know why. And I think it pays off. I think the better understanding you have of how things work, the easier it is to do the right thing.
Mm. And for you, I mean, you sort of mentioned you have sort of targets and you drift in and out, right? So do you go by weight? Do you go by how you feel? Do you go by, your general approach? What is your yardstick or your measure of success here?
It can be a little combination of everything. And I do want to say that I think just weight is a poor metric of health to understand if it's improving or not improving. So, for example, we're launching a strength and nutrition online coaching program. And me and my producer have been beta testing the strength component. And I probably doubled the intensity of my workouts. I was following everything to a T. And in 30 days, I had a difference of 0.1 pounds on the scale. Which most people would be extremely frustrated. But we did tape measurements and we did pinch calipers and I had body fat readings. And what I found out is I put on about 5 pounds of muscle and I lost 4.9 pounds of fat. That's 10 pounds of positive difference. So if all I was looking at was the number on the scale, I'd have been pretty disappointed. And that happens to people. In the first 4 to 6 weeks of starting a strength program, you usually put on similar amount of muscle as to what you're burning in fat, and people give up right when they're really getting some momentum going. Weight could be a metric, how I feel, how I look, my energy, all those things. And really my only significant setback in the last 12 years was the whole funeral, the process, everything surrounding that. That was a huge upheaval in my life, my lifestyle, my ability to control my surroundings and my environment. And then I figured it out before it got away from me.
Mm. And that's okay, right? I mean, it's
Yeah,
you do
that's
slip.
really
Life is happening. This is, it's going on as we speak. So, yeah, and it's just being okay with it and saying, "Listen, we are where we are, and that's fine." You just nip it
yeah,
and move on.
yeah, absolutely.
Mm. Can you do you find when you're looking at someone or either their habits or their diets or whatever else? I mean, does that tell you about what's going on inside as well? Does that make sense? I mean, does the outside reflect the inside as far as you
I
find?
mean, I could draw conclusions from educated guesses, but sometimes you have no idea. Half my job is being a therapist. I'm not a licensed therapist, but I do use some cognitive behavioral techniques and therapies and try and get to help people reverse engineer thought processes and decision makings and figure out why. And I do encourage my clients to also have a practitioner that specializes that. I work with networks of people. I have a functional doctor where I send my clients to for blood work. I have a physical therapist I refer out to, and I stay within scope. But a big piece of it is trying to reach in deep and find out what are causing these behaviors, and trying to circumvent those at the root. So just looking at the diet alone, it helps, but it's not always the full picture. And if they're not willing to share, it's hard for us to go deep enough to dig out the root.
And in your experience, I mean, what have you found being likely routes for, people find themselves in these situations? Is it emotional? Is it trauma? Is there any number of things really?
A lot of times it's relationship trauma, either divorces, separations, being dumped. It could be traumatic experiences, abuse. It could be all kinds of things. It could be work stress. It could be just breakdowns in confidence in different areas of their lives. I think a lot of people intrinsically, subconsciously will eat, eat, and eat and create this barrier of making themselves bigger as a protective barrier subconsciously. I mean, that's a whole thing. And it's very different from person to person. But I do see that quite often. It could be linchpin issues. Um, and in a lot of those areas, I think a licensed professional in therapy, psychology, things like that could make a difference. But I do try and help my clients to the best of my ability through those aspects and refer out when it's appropriate.
Yeah. And there's their old saying, of course, that says you can never out-train a bad diet. I mean, do you find that is true? Is that gospel as such?
1,000,000%. My favorite meal in college was at Chili's. I don't know if you guys have that in the UK, but in the States or wherever you're at, I'm sorry. But it's just a chain restaurant like bar and grill, pub food, and other things like that. But it's a chicken crispers with honey chipotle sauce with endless basket of French fries and corn on the cob. And I probably had that 2 to 3 times a week in college with absurd amounts of ranch dressing. And I found out years later when I quit doing that, that single meal was 2,600 calories, which is more the entire day for most people for maintenance, let alone trying to lose weight. So it would literally take me 11 consecutive hours of strength training or cardio to be able to eat that meal and still see weight loss. Because after I burn that off, I still have the rest of the day that I've eaten in my maintenance amount. So I do think that still applies. You can never out train a bad diet. It's not possible.
Yeah, it is fascinating, isn't it? How, we're almost naive is maybe not the right thing, but we're sort of blind to. I didn't realize I was eating X thousand calories, in the snacks and is it down to the snacks? Is it down to the meals? Is it the type of meals? What do you tend to find it is?
So typically I go back to what I refer to as the no-go list. And those are the ingredients we want to avoid. Not eliminate, that's not realistic. Super Bowl's coming up, it's a big thing here in the States, and I'm going to eat some wings, I'm going to eat some chips, I'm going to have a good time. But I'm going to eat better versions of all those things. So we'll come back to that analogy in just a second. So that no-go list is typically wheat, grain, and corn, soy and dairy, alcohol, sugars, and then anything that's going to be a hormonal modifier like red dyes and things like that, which is as its own category. So let's start with wheat, grain, and corn. I don't think it's realistic to never have those items, and some people do just fine with them. But if you have any health transformation goals, weight loss goals, skin issues, and things like that, we need to take a hard look at the amount of it in our diet and how it's prepared. Because there's a protein in those items, it's similar to gluten, it's called lectin, and it is a hormonal modifier. It's a mimicker of insulin, although where insulin will detach from a cell when it's full of glucose, that lectin protein is going to allow it to spill out into the bloodstream without shutting off that portal. And that glucose floating around in the bloodstream has to be stored as something, which is fat as adipose tissue and fat in the liver, which is why 1 in 2 Americans are thought to have had non-alcoholic fatty liver disease by 2030. They believe 50% of us will. Basically cirrhosis in the liver without a drop of alcohol. And 60% of the world's consumption of food right now is wheat, grain, and corn. Now, a little bit of that's okay for most people, but once your body is no longer running optimally and you have hormonal disruption, I think it's a good idea to minimize contact with those foods. And if you're going to prepare rice or something, if you pressure cook it in something like an Instant Pot, It's going to break down that lectin protein and make it a little bit better for you. It's not going to turn it into a health food, but it'll make it better. So educate people on better ways to eat things, even on the no-go list. Soy has xeno and phytoestrogens. It's going to create an estrogen imbalance in a lot of people. So men who are concerned about boobs, man boobs, a big component of that is the estrogen component, beer, but also soy-containing products can do something similar. And for women, particularly, soy can be pretty harmful on thyroid. It can contribute to estrogen and progesterone imbalances, which lead to thyroid dysfunction. So soy is something I try and avoid. Dairy. Now there's good dairy and bad dairy, and that has to do with a mutation in protein in American cows versus New Zealand cows and some of the other ones. In American cows, they have something called A1 casein. And A1 casein, that type of protein, responds very poorly in the lining of the small intestines. It usually flares up an increase in mucosal secretion as a protective barrier to stop that protein from doing more damage, which is why a lot of kids end up with ear infections. But with adults, it can lead to GI issues. It can lead to, for anybody, it can lead to autoimmune issues, such as respiratory issues like asthma, could potentially increase your risk for type 2 diabetes. So I try and get my clients on more A2 types of casein dairy products, like goat and milk products. They don't have that mutation. They'll still have the sugars and everything, but it's not going to have that problem. And then, the more fermented a milk product is, the more of the lactose has been diminished. So Greek yogurt would be a better choice than, plain yogurt, as an example. And then, wheat, grain, corn, soy, dairy, alcohol, for obvious reasons. It does tax the liver, and it's just straight up sugar. It has no other nutritive property. So I minimize it. I don't say get rid of it. That'd be a really boring life. So if you have a healthy relationship with alcohol and you have no urge or desire to drink it, then I think it can be a healthy amount of it in your life without it being problematic. And that's going to differ for everybody, how much that is and what source. I will say vodka, because it's not from wheat, grain, and corn, might be a better choice. And there's some debate about red wine and resveratrol, and if that has some better properties. I think it's probably a better choice than white wine. Me personally, I like bourbon. I like what I like. So Woodford Reserve is my go-to. But I have maybe anywhere from most months 2 drinks, some months as much as 8 drinks for the whole month. But that's me personally. My dad was an alcoholic, and that was part of what killed him. So I'm afraid of it. And I have a healthy fear of alcohol, and it might be easier. Maybe that's why it's not a problem for me. But some people really struggle with that, and 1 drink leads to 30 drinks, and that's problematic. So, and then sugar. Remember, wheat, grain, and corn is all metabolized as glucose, which is still sugar. So if you want to figure out the teaspoons of sugar equivalent of any product, just go on the label and read carbohydrate number. Let's say it's 40. You're going to take that number and divide by 4. 40 carbohydrates is equivalent to 10 teaspoons of sugar, because 40 divided by 4 is 10. Now, in the States, we have Mountain Dew, and there, in a typical 24-ounce bottle, there are 19 and a half teaspoons worth of liquid sugar. That's insane. I do a demonstration where I get a glass out and I put in so people can see what 19 and a half teaspoons of sugar looks like. And in 1 gulp, it's gone. And it goes, that's fatty liver and all the other issues, type 2 diabetes. My personal weight loss journey, the very first thing I did, no exercise change, no diet change, except when I went to Arby's, Wendy's, and fast food, I stopped ordering a soda. That was it. I lost 10 pounds in like a month because that massive rush of sugar was cut off. But it's not just that. It could be smoothies. Like we have a place called Smoothie King, and most of the smoothies have 100 grams of carbohydrate. 100 divided by 4, that's more sugar than that Mountain Dew. It's 25 teaspoons. Juicy juice and things like that advertised to kids, 100% juice, no sugar added. It doesn't need any sugar added. It's all sugar. So in the form of fructose, which is actually in some ways worse than cane sugar. So I think understanding those relationships is key. And then the final thing I'll mention on this no-go list is the artificial sweeteners like sucralose and aspartame. I want to start with sucralose, the no-calorie sweetener. A lot of people don't know this, but it was discovered from a pesticide. And what the pesticide would do was attract bugs. They would eat that because of the sweetness, and it would cause, the way the bugs would die is their intestinal systems would explode, and that's what would kill them. So some genius said, well, humans are bigger than bugs. It's a 0-calorie sweetener, so let's turn it into a food for dieters, and we'll be fine. But it's a known fact. If you have too much sucralose in your diet, you're going to have GI issues, gastrointestinal problems, irritable bowel, and things like that. So I think understanding those things and the risks associated with the 0-calorie, because in many cases, I actually think cane sugar might be a better choice than most diet drinks.
I mean, it's pretty hard listening, because I mean, you just realize how far down the rabbit hole we are. Our diet is and that it's a mixture. It's down to choices, but also it's down to availability too, right? And then government and sort of interception for health benefits. I mean, and it is that thing of going, how do we change all this? I mean, do you have any thoughts on this on a global scale, how we could potentially start the change process?
I think it starts with education, getting the facts out there. There's a lot, especially in the States, I mean, there's a lot of incentive for the government to support the unhealthy things because they're cash crops. And they make a lot of money. There's a documented video of lipid scientists in front of Congress saying, hey, switching everything to these Ansel Keys type diets of canola oil and soybean and all the added sugars to make them palatable, this is what's creating heart disease, not fat. And Congress looked at him and said, we know, but there's too much money involved. And that's a big part of it. But I think it starts with education. It's hard to cut through the noise because there's so much nonsense out there. Yeah. So understanding how foods affect hormones and then making the choices that are best for you. I know not everybody's fortunate enough to have expendable income to spend on a coach or a trainer. But podcasts are free. I have a podcast, and one of my goals is to provide free education. And I have scientists, I have dietitians, I have health coaches, I have people with their own transformative stories, so people can get this information at no cost. I post content on my Instagram on everything, just free information to help people, tricks, tips. I have 84 free recipes. There's no blog. I don't tell you about grandfather's farm and the first time I had a potato and it tasting like dirt. It just goes straight to the freaking recipe. So you can find good, healthy recipes with good ingredients and some education. I got the YouTube videos, but finding people that are doing it and seeing what's funding it, especially research studies too. Find out, does anybody have a financial gain from this research before you accept it as fact? Can make a difference. But just getting that education so you understand what's going on and you can make better decisions for yourself, I think that's a big piece of it.
And it is getting harder and harder, right? Just to, we're not going to get into the vaccine discussion, but I mean, it is that thing of, because, where are you getting your facts? And as you say, has it been sponsored? Is it, is it independent, and is it reliable? Is it, trustworthy? And it's getting harder and harder, it feels like, for the general public to get the truth. And then there's different levels of the truth. Is it my truth? Is it your truth? Is it an organization's truth? Or is it, you can see why people are confused, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And here's the other thing. I don't believe any two people should be eating the same. I think everybody has different needs and what'll work for them, which complicates it more. But I do think that no-go list, reducing that, works for pretty much everybody. Who's going to see a positive impact in their health if they start looking at those changes. But some people may be fine with oats and corn. Maybe their body handles it well, but most people, no. Because of that lectin protein, what's going on with the small intestinal lining, leaky gut, things like that, may be a bad idea. So I think it should be individualized, but I would start there. I even have a free habit quiz. It's 56 true or false questions, and it'll categorize 7 sections of health, so you can see where you poorest at, and then starting there. and working from there. That's all at firewithinnf.com. NF is in nutrition and fitness. So just tools like that to find out, where are you lacking the most and making a change. Yeah, it seems like an insurmountable mountain, but it is possible. People do it, but just finding people that give good information, that are non-biased, that just want to help people. That's a good start.
Totally makes sense. Tell me this: what's your overall goals here? What's your intentions, if you like? Do you know, is this your purpose, do you think? Are you sitting in that place?
I think my purpose is to help people increase their quality of life through understanding their bodies better, how food impacts them, and health changes. I'm a teacher at heart. I kind of glossed over that in my background, but I went to school to be an educator. I taught middle and high school band for 4 years. So I'm a teacher at heart. But after I lost the weight, I just became a lot more passionate about the impact I can make through fitness and nutrition. And I think most people, when they're born, they have this innate sense of creating a positive impact. And it's the same for me. And I think I'm best suited to do that in the health and nutrition field.
And is there anyone in particular that you think you can serve best, if that makes sense? Who really is this for?
I think anybody looking to improve their health, whether it's weight loss, whether it's working on their cholesterol, not wanting, anybody that wants to change their stars, maybe they have a family history of this, or they've been in this cycle and they don't feel like they can break through that cycle. It is possible. People do it every day. So I think that's who I'm for. The people that are struggling, they've tried all the diets and now they want something sustainable that's achievable, that's not going to go away. That's who I serve. No shortcuts. That's one of my slogans. That's my catchphrase. There are no shortcuts. Let's do this the right way.
Why? I was going to say, why is it important? No shortcuts. Why not?
Because they always come back and bite you. Let me do the keto diet. All right. Well, what are you going to do after keto? You're never going to have carbohydrate again? No, you're going to binge like crazy, and it's going to come back on in some cases. Not in all cases. Now there's keto cycling. Maybe that's more sustainable. What's it going to do to your gallbladder and other blood markers? And I'm not against the keto diet. I think it does amazing things, especially for people with cancer. And I think it has its place. And there might be a small section of the population that really could thrive on the keto diet long term, but not most. So if we jump to that just because it's this popular buzz thing and it quickly gets weight off, in the end, you may end up putting that weight back on and then some. It wasn't a gradual process. You didn't address consistent habits. You didn't get to the root of the problem. Same thing with exercise. I could make somebody do this crazy amount of high intensity cardio, and at first they're going to lose a lot of weight. But what's it going to do to their adrenal system? What's it going to do to the HPA axis, the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the adrenals? And what's it going to do to their thyroid? It's going to slow it down. And they're going to have this cycle of hormonal problems. And eventually that type of workout's going to stop working for them. So rather, I'd like to have people become more in tune in their body, find out more about foods and things affect their hormones, and exercise specific to their needs.
It is that change, isn't it? So it's diet, it's exercise, it's compounding, it's all things together, and it doesn't always have to be crazy stuff. As you say, it could be cutting out the sugary drinks, it could be looking at portion control, it could be any of those, but there's that sort of long-term impact of benefit, if you like.
Yeah.
Where do you see this all going for you? What's what would you what are you manifesting? What are you aiming for?
Yeah, my favorite thing to do is public speaking. So I'd love to have a larger audience, get the word out. I'm working on a book. That's years out, but I kind of put that to the side to work on the online coaching platform. From a one-to-one practice, I'm full. I can't get anybody else in. I'm doing anywhere from 40 to 52 appointments a week. and I want to have bigger outreach. So that's why I started with the podcast, and now I'm creating the online process. I've spent months and months and months replicating myself in video form, and creating a program that'll have some coaching element as well in the community of group calls and things like that to help a larger audience get to where they want to go. So that's where I'm headed now, is bigger outreach that way. And then more opportunities to speak and eventually get that book out.
What's the book about for you?
And as far as the contents, or why I'm writing it?
Well, both actually. I'm curious to know, how's it going to serve you, and ultimately how it will serve others.
So how would it serve me? I think it's a way to compile all of my experience, and a way to, I guess, consciously realize the connection with all my experiences and how that manifests into actions and events in my life. And to serve others, I'm hoping they can take that and everything that I've gone through, experienced, and learned, and use it to their own benefit, and use that as a template for a way to structure their learning, their growth. So that's the overall goal of it.
And for you, is it exercise and food in sort of equal parts, or just changing the food alone? Is that a good start, do you think? Would that be enough?
I think doing either can make a difference, but I would suggest starting with the nutrition. For most people, if they only have the capacity to do one or the other. I do believe it's 80% nutrition, 20% exercise.
Yeah.
Makes a huge difference. But sometimes they can tie in hand, because if I do a workout, I don't want to undo that workout and eat something horrible. So habit-wise, and how my brain is wired, maybe not everybody's this way, but if I just invested that time into that workout, I'm not going to go drink a milkshake right after. Everybody's different, though. Everybody's wired differently.
Well, that's the thing, and I suppose even those people that will be reading your book as well. I mean, it's having that motivation to, one, read the book, and two, then how it can serve, really. So it's it sort of feels, you say, if you're fully booked out, it's how can you serve on a different level? How can you serve a wider audience, right? Because one-to-one is great, but it's very time intensive. It's very resource intensive. So, I mean, is that a constant conscious change for you, is to try and scale up and to sort of have a greater impact, if you like?
Yeah, absolutely. That's been the goal from the get-go. And I've slowly stacked that, went from just one-to-one, and then I added the podcast, then I added the speaking opportunities. So I do public speaking all the time and workshops. Started working with nonprofits, Dorcas Ministries, and then I also have a baby on the way. So September 8th is the due date. And, I worked with my wife, who had some hormonal challenges, PCOS and all these things. And, the doctors told us it wasn't possible without fertility treatment. And luckily, my wife's stubborn as a mule and changed her diet and her habits. And within about a year, we were able to do it without any medical intervention. So if you give your body the building blocks it needs, anything's possible. But yeah, I want to scale up. I want to have a bigger impact, and I don't think I'll ever have. I don't think that desire will ever go away.
There's a great saying in the Psycho-Cybernetics book, the Matthew Maltz's book, and he talks about, the surgeon can dress the wound, but the body will heal it, and it's that ultimate thing, right? It's ultimately the body is, I mean, it's what, the 7.2 billion-ish of us here on this big, large rock called Earth, and yet we couldn't create a human being. Could we even create a hand? It's like, we can replicate a hand, we can do all that, but we couldn't make one. And that's like, we're so advanced, but yet we're also so basic. We're passengers in more ways than we might remember, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We were just talking about that with all the advances in science and medicine, and not one person on the planet can tell why my wife has nausea 24 hours a day in the first trimester. Nobody knows why or how to fix it, other than you're pregnant.
It has been for years, and God knows, how long, right? So that's awesome news. Well, congratulations. I mean, it's one, obviously the actual, becoming pregnant, and two, that it's the forthcoming. So how's that going to
Yeah,
feel for you? Is it something you're looking forward to?
that's all. That's all I've wanted. I've wanted to be a dad for a long time. So I'm excited. I hope it's healthy. Hope it's a boy, but I don't get to control any of that. If it's a girl, I'll be just as happy. Um, but as the saying goes, if you have a boy, you only have one penis to worry about. But if you have a girl, you have to worry about every other penis on the planet. So, so
I have
just from
I have three girls, so yeah, no, I get it. I get it.
yeah.
It's that aspect. For you, I mean, is this a transformation for you coming up, I suppose, really, in your home life and opportunities, and really sort of seeing that. So it's something you're relishing.
Yeah, I'm both excited and terrified. My wife's probably going to be working from home, at least for a little bit, and and I work out of my home. So it's going to be interesting how I could weave my clients in and out of here, especially my one-on-one training clients who we train on site here. So it'll definitely be a change. I'll have to figure out a better schedule because I work with clients from 6 a.m. till 7:30 p.m. currently, which is 13 and a half hour day. But there's going to be more support needed for the baby and for my wife, and I'm not sure how sustainable uh, that that schedule is going to be. So that's part of the shift to the online coaching.
Mm.
Um, I'll keep as many of my clients as I can, but something's going to have to change when that baby comes.
Mm. No, absolutely. I'll spare you the details of what's likely to happen. Having yeah, we sort of gone through it, so, but yeah, no, it is, it's a big change, right? Because in many great ways it sort of forces, not forces a change, I mean, in a positive way. It's a bit like transformation in general. Sometimes it's in our choice, and then sometimes environmental or social factors happen around us which trigger a change too, right? And that's coming back to almost the pleasure driven. It's like, well, when there's a child, then there's legacy, there's responsibility, there's opportunity, there's all these things. But um it's interesting too that actually, people will be far more motivated by their children or their pets than they are about themselves. And I think that's always, I don't know, it's always, there's some statistic, and I don't know whether it's true or not, but they're saying statistically there's a higher chance that you will make sure that your dog gets the full antibiotic dose than you will. So the dog's more likely to get the full, whatever it is, 14-day course or 7-day course or whatever, than more chance of that happening than you getting your full course. And it's like, we're back to self-care again, right? It's like, why don't
Yeah.
why don't we just do it? Why don't we just eat the right stuff, for God's sake, and do the damn work and get on with it?
I think hormonally things are not stacked in our favor with these super hyper palatable foods that were never found in these combinations in nature that we've been able to produce on a wide scale. So I just think it's stacked against us.
I mean, it's intriguing too. I mean, there's a book, I don't, you probably read it, Born to Run,
Yeah.
and Scott Jarrett, and there was someone else, I can't remember, but it was that thing, right? Because, and they were saying, probably, I'm thinking back to your Chili's meal there. It's like 2,600 calories, and it's like that's probably more than somebody in potentially in a tribe or somewhere else that might have in days, possibly, right? So
Yeah.
we're just overdoing it totally, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
you know and that's just down to, is it human nature, is it greed, what is it, do you think?
I'm not sure what it is. Maybe part of it's greed. I mean, yeah, I've been listening to a lot of history podcasts, and it's very interesting to hear about how when they settle and how um, crops kind of domesticated us in a way, even though they don't have the high intelligence we do. But in order for wheat, grain, and corn to grow, it has to be constantly plowed and tilled, and somebody's life has to be dedicated to it. And our health gets worse, and now that's spread to every corner of the globe. And I don't know. So maybe part of the greed of taking over other countries and spreading these crops to send back, maybe that's part of it. I think there's all kinds of ways this can go.
Mm, no, totally. So tell me, what's a bit of a guilty pleasure for Brandon then? What's your get out?
Huh. Let's see. Well, I mentioned bourbon, but it's pretty rare. I love dessert. I'm a big dessert guy. If we go out to eat, I want to try their dessert. And there's
Y-
an Italian place, and they have what's that?
What are you going for? What's the go-to in that?
I mean, I like variety. I'm a foodie. 100% I'm a foodie at heart. Some days I feel like I get up just to try new foods and enjoy. but my favorite, honestly, is a really good steak with a lot of marbleization. And I don't want no filet mignon. It ain't got any fat. I want a ribeye. So I love a good steak. That's probably my favorite. We do wings, but we make them healthier. So we use, instead of harmful canola oil, we do coconut oil mixed with like Frank's Red Hot sauce, which has two main ingredients: vinegar and cayenne. And then we get organic wings. We don't fry them. We put them in the oven, and then we finish them on the grill. But I can crush some wings anywhere. Those are some of my favorites.
Awesome. And leisure and pleasure for you? What is downtime or getting away time? What does that look like?
I'm obsessed with my dog. I have a Shiba Inu named Molly. People don't believe me, but I actually like her better than most of my family, um, and most people. They're funny dogs. They're like cats, So she doesn't really like to be pet or held. So it's really special if she does show interest in it. But they're super loyal. They like to be near you. They're very playful. They're very intelligent. And I love spending time with her. I take her in the car with me everywhere I go that allows pets. Um, and so that's one. I started playing Ultimate Frisbee on just a for fun league. Not even a league, it's just a meetup. And that's a lot of fun for me. I like going on hikes. But probably my number one favorite leisurely thing to do is to go to concerts. I was a music major, and always thought I'd be a musician or a music teacher the rest of my life, but I made that switch. But music is a huge part of my life. And pre-pandemic, I was going to 2 to 3 shows a week. So it wouldn't be uncommon for me to buy 10 concert tickets, usually smaller venues, in a month. Love music festivals and things like that. I love the energy. Even if the music is awful, I just love the energy. I love the crowd, the people watching. I'm very much an extrovert. I'm not an introvert. And there's just something really attractive about live music, whether it's orchestral, rock, punk. I'll listen to anything. I have my favorite genres, but I have a mentor, Prior Green, and he refers to himself as my music guru. And he'll say, "Hey, come just check this concert out." Sometimes they suck, and he loves them, but I always go, and I always have a good time. So something about that live environment, it's fun.
Do you play as well? You say music major. I mean, what's your go-to? Do you have an instrument?
So I don't really play anymore, but trumpet was my major in college. I picked up guitar and piano in 6th grade, and still can play a little bit of that. I've dedicated so much of my time to the business. I haven't played much recently, but my mini dream goal is to get a baby grand and start writing again. I used to love writing for piano. Um, so maybe that'll happen again soon. I don't think music's out of my life, not just yet. Just waiting for the right time to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Tell us, I mean, if you were to try and describe your fire in the belly then in 1 or 2 words, what would they be, Brandon?
Describe my what?
Your fire in the belly. If you were to try and describe them in 1 or 2 words, what would they be?
2 words to describe what. So basically, what drives me. Um, Say positive impact. If I don't take care of myself, I can't take care of others. If I can't model what I preach, I'm a fraud. And now I have a platform and I have people listening. I can't let them down. I can't let myself down. I can't let my kid down. Because when I start parenting, it's going to get harder and harder to do the right things because I'm going to have less energy, less time for it. And taking care of that baby is going to take over a lot of the time, selfish time that I have now to work on myself. So it's going to be tough to balance, but I have to prove it's possible and that it's sustainable.
Yeah, it's getting balance is always an interesting one, right? It's always interesting.
Yeah.
So tell us, what way can people reach out to you? What way can they contact you, and really where can you signpost people to?
Yeah, I'd love for you to check out my website, firewithinnf.com. We have a refuel newsletter that goes out every week with the podcast of the week, the recipe of the week, helpful tip video of the week. You can subscribe to that on the homepage, or if you go to the recipe page, you'll get one prompt, and then the pop-up will never come back. But you'll get one prompt to sign up for the newsletter if you check out the recipe page. Just create a username, send your email, and that'll subscribe you. But check out the recipes, check out the podcast, take the free habit evaluation tool that's in the top right corner of the homepage. It doesn't cost anything. There's 2 free segments of my nutrition course too, one on supplements and one on, I can't remember what the other way, I guess it's the no-go list or something like that. But check it out. There's a lot of free information. You can reach me at firewithinnf@gmail.com. And I'd love to get to know you, see if there's anything I can do to help you, or if you just want to receive some good information through the content we've put out there. That's the hope.
Awesome. Is there a final message you'd like to leave with our listeners today?
Sure. I think regardless of where you're at, regardless of your age, regardless of what you're trying to overcome, a transformation is possible. Scientists believe that every cell in your body is replaced every 7 years. And that's why people have the ability to overcome quote unquote chronic illnesses and things like that. I've had clients in their 70s that have had arthritis for decades, and they minimize wheat grain and corn and watch what they're eating, exercise properly, and they no longer need their arthritis medication. It's not a miracle. It's just for the first time they consistently gave their body what it needed. But it does take time. I don't believe there's shortcuts that are worth taking if you want to see consistent, long-lasting results. So it's a slower journey to do it right, but it's worthwhile.
No, absolutely. Brandon, listen, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it. And listen, obviously to signpost people to your podcast as well, so they really to sort of let people know there's loads of ways, loads of information, as we're saying. It's information out there that you can sort of help yourself, you can sort of go forward. So, just making the difference, right? So that's what it's all about. Brandon, thank you. Until the next time, I'll see you again.
Absolutely.